So I am here with Delly, who is well known for his NBA championship. He's a pro basketball player and more recently a Bitcoiner. You had some media coverage of your kind of entry and involvement in the Bitcoin world, which has been awesome. I think we first connected about 6 months ago. And one thing we discovered is apart from Bitcoin, we both shared a love for health. And I think particularly some health topics that go a little outside of the norm. I know we both love the sun, and I thought it'd be a lot of fun to just record a conversation with you and just kind of talk about, why, what interests you there and what's moved the needle for you in your life. So thanks for coming on with us.
No, thanks for having me, Stephen. And obviously really enjoy chatting health stuff with you and have learned a lot. And I think the funny thing is the more I learn, the less I know about the body. And it's obviously a deep topic. And as an athlete, you're always looking to improve and find any edge you can. And I think that's the biggest thing that firstly led me to Bitcoin, but also has led me to try out all different kinds of things health-wise.
Awesome. So I want to find out what some of those are, but I think actually the first question I have for you is, are you on the teams you've played on in professional basketball? Is everyone kind of like you, or are you unique in some of these interests? Like, how does that shake out?
I would say probably more on the unique side. There's usually, one or two guys on each team where, we'll be chatting about different topics and things they're trying. Recently, I've enjoyed talking with more people from other sports about what they try, because it's sometimes, you spend a lot of time with basketballers and everyone is doing similar things, but especially being back in Australia, talking to some Aussie football players about what they do as well. So I'd say more on the unique side.
Yeah, I kind of had that feeling. Like, I wasn't sure, but I kind of had a feeling that even though, like, obviously, like, your body is really important to you and to anybody who's a professional athlete, but yeah, I kind of had a feeling that you might be a little outside of the norm there. So what has what has most caught your attention? What has made the biggest difference for you? Like, as you've explored these things and you've tried different things, like, what's stuck? What's been the most important?
Yeah, and just, I guess, to go back to what you said before, I think number one for me, and that's how I got into Bitcoin, was just being curious and learning, and taking ownership over your body. I mean, you only have one body, one career, one life, and no one is going to care more about your career or your health than you. And I think obviously Bitcoiners have that in terms of taking ownership and personal responsibility over their finance and savings. But I think as an athlete, that's the number one thing, that you have to take responsibility, and then that leads you to spend a lot of time learning and asking questions. And I've been very fortunate to spend a lot of time around, experts in health and different things. So I always try to pick their brain and pick up one or two things. So it would be hard to say,
Yeah.
one or two things, because I feel like a lot of things are, 1% here, 2% here, and it all adds up. But I think nutrition, sleep, are the biggest two, and you have to take care of those two buckets, and then everything else around that are the little 1%ers.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said something there, I actually think, like, health, like tackling health and having an interest in these things, that was probably the first area that introduced me to the concept of sovereignty, or especially in the sense of, like you were saying, like, it's my responsibility. Like, if I don't take care of my body, no one else will. And the outcomes that I get. And then further, it was this insight that our body is like kind of the base layer of everything we do. It's the base layer of how you move around the world. It's, your mind is obviously influenced by, how your body is functioning, your hormone levels, your neurotransmitter levels, what your diet's like, how much sleep you got. Like all of these things influence our mind. They influence our relationships. They influence how we move about the world and what we do. And so it's not only that, like, I'm responsible and it comes down to me, and if I don't do it, no one will do it, but also that it literally is one of the few things you can optimize that influences everything else. And that was really like, I think that started, like that really got me into it, of just realizing this is like a base layer and it's on me.
Definitely. And like you said, I think especially your energy levels, I mean, that affects everything. And you can spend time working on different things, but if you can bring up your energy levels, you can try to work harder than everybody, but you can also recover better. And I think, especially if you're trying to be a professional athlete, you have to be able to work hard over a really long period of time. And to do that, you need to have a lot of energy, and you need to be able to recover. So that's probably the biggest thing that, I try to focus on is, obviously my energy levels, which is sleep and nutrition. But I think that's important for anyone trying to be good at or great in whatever field they choose to focus on. So I know we have probably different views on mattresses, but the 8 is something that I've been using for a long time now, and I'm a hot sleeper, and it really has helped me. And being on an NBA schedule when you're getting in at 2-3 in the morning, having to play the next night, just being able to stay consistent and have higher energy levels than the people you're competing against, it's a huge advantage.
Absolutely. No, it plays into everything. And I would use one of those mattresses in a heartbeat if they had like a very firm model. Like I just need that. But I've actually been enjoying. It's a little cool here. I'm down in Florida for the listeners, and it's been getting to like the 50s overnight. So I've just been cracking the windows and like getting that cool air. It's nice. But it's, I think that energy, like that energy level, I think it drives everything. And I think not just conceptually or as we're thinking about like how to have more energy, but the concept of energy and then also recovery, you said. Those have been two big ones for me, even recently. And I'm going to come back to the energy topic, but so, you're a professional athlete. I am a hobbyist when it comes to athletics, but I've been in the gym a lot this last year, and I've always loved working out. I've loved various things, but I've been in the gym. I've been trying to build muscle. I've done a few cycles of that throughout my life, but the most recent one was the most effective. I've like really been able to put on mass there, and I think one of the levers that I'd pulled, that I'd managed this time, that I feel like contributed so much to that, is I focused way more on my recovery and eating rather than just like how much I was exerting myself in the gym. And I've just come to believe that like the recovery, that's your limiting variable. It's not how hard you can work. It's how much can you recover? Because the moment you go past that recovery, you're not getting any additional benefit. In fact, you're actually getting additional like harm or stress. Like there's actually more of a deficit. And there's obviously some important caveats there of like, it's different when you're talking about like skill work, like you as an athlete, like there's a difference between you developing the skill of shooting a shot and like how fast your body can add new quadriceps tissue. Those are two different things. But on the purely physiological level of new muscle tissue, of neurological strength, I've personally come to believe that like recovery, that's your cap, and you need to optimize for that. And even at lower levels of like input of like stimulus, I'd rather have less stimulus and perfect recovery than like maximizing my stimulus and having poor recovery. Would you agree with that? Would you disagree with that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think congratulations on your gains. I've been seeing your updates on Twitter, and I think it's impressive. And I think I love nothing more than seeing like different transformations on Twitter, whether it's people getting their own personal best, because I know how that feels when you improve at something, and the personal satisfaction is when you know you've put in hard work and you've gotten results. That there really is not many better feelings than that. So great work. But I think, like you said, the difference is like as an athlete, like when you're competing, like sometimes you have to push it to the limit. And that's, I guess, the hard thing to balance is when you are in competition, you are sometimes, pushing your body to the limit, and then you just have to figure it out on the back end, which forces you to learn more and figure out recovery things that work for you. Because you're not always going to be in an ideal situation where you can progress your load in this kind of controlled manner. You might end up, the game might go to overtime, and then you're playing more minutes, and then you might have a back-to-back and have to play again the next night. So I think I agree that recovery is the limiting factor, and if you're working out and can control your schedule, and it makes it easier in a way that it's all controlled, like the variables, you can see what works for you. Sometimes when you're in competition, it is what it is, and you just have to figure it out on the back end.
No, that makes all the sense in the world. It's almost like a real world environment rather than, I think in the gym and in these things. Yeah, like it is very controlled. I love all the research on it. I love kind of nerding out on, the studies and supplementation and these various things. But like there's a far cry between that and like, I think, competition is a microcosm of like, well, that's just the natural state of the world. Like if you were a farmer and there was a flood one night, like, the world doesn't care that you needed more recovery. Or if you were a hunter-gatherer before farmers were around, like, if you guys didn't have food, you had to go hunt more. And, it's a far cry, I think, from the controlled environments that I think a lot of people, not that those are bad, like it's great if you can, optimize like that. But you make a very good point that like, when push comes to shove, that goes out the window. And, and that's kind of the story of humanity, though. I think there's something very like deeply human in whatever it is that's in us that allows us to like rise above those challenges. And I think there's a lot of, I of course have never known that in like the context that, you've known it in. And this might seem like a little bit of a lame comparison compared to what you're talking about, but I at least feel like I get like a tiny taste of that when we're flying out to do like Bitcoin conferences and I'm hosting 10 dinners and speaking on stage 5 times. It's a very different thing. I'm not trying to compare too much, but you're just running for a week. Like, you're on the spot, you're on stage, you're in front of people, and like there's a different system that takes over. Like optimal goes out the window. A lot of my practices go out the window when it's conference time.
And then I'm sure, just have to figure it out on the back end, and get some more sun and sleep and recover up that week. But what are the biggest recovery things that you've found? You said that's been the moving factor for you in your gains.
Absolutely. So literally just eating enough. Like, you and I are both like taller, probably more active. Like, guys. And I needed to start eating 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day. And like, I walk a lot, I'm burning 1,000 calories walking. I've got like a 2,500. If I just laid in bed all day, my basal metabolic rate. So that puts me at like 3,500 just to break even. But, and that's, before any sort of strength training or anything. So, but like really, really pushing the eating high quality foods. And then, I'm obviously like kind of known for this in Bitcoin world, but I'm a huge believer in like circadian rhythm. And I've been doing some digging into like, what are the circadian pathways with like muscle growth and with hypertrophy and with these various things. And there haven't been a lot of studies on it. Like no one has done the study of like, okay, let's get two groups of athletes. They're going to go do, a knee extension machine for X number of reps for 3 months. And we're going to see how much their, rectus femoris has grown, how much their quads have grown over that period. And one group's going to have like a shit circadian rhythm. They're just going to be inside under artificial lights all day and not see the sun. The other group, they're going to be out in the sun. They're going to have a normal circadian rhythm. And we're going to see like, did that influence like how much muscle they put on? Nobody's done that study. I think that would be a very cool study to do. And if anyone is listening to this that would like to do that study, you should. But what you can find is that there is absolutely circadian gene regulation of the process of putting on muscle tissue. So with that, like we know that the circadian system, the light system is involved with how the body recovers and how the body adds muscle tissue and so on. So I think it's a reasonable assumption to think there's some relationship there. To me, I think it's obvious that if you throw that all out the window, it'll be operating suboptimally, at least in some way. The question is just how much and how large are the benefits. But I think you can go further than that. And so, I'm big on when the sun goes down, I've used only like dim red lights at night for the last 7 years. I've done this for a long time. I've gotten a lot of other people to do it. I swear by it. And it's critical. So obviously it helps your sleep. Like the key reason you're doing it is because anything else will suppress your melatonin levels heavily. But melatonin isn't just like a sleep hormone. Like people know it. It's just like, oh, it's a sleep hormone. You'll sleep better. It's not that simple. It's actually the most potent antioxidant that your body has. So it's critical in repairing cellular damage. And you get a lot of it at night because that's when your body is doing those repair processes. But so if you don't kind of impair that kind of melatonin process at night, you're going to sleep better. You're going to have a more deep sleep, more recovery in your sleep. So I would, I don't have again, there's no study on that one, but that's one that I swear by. And I think like optimizing sleep, like not just getting enough sleep, but optimizing the quality of your sleep. I think that's a huge one.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think you can tell when you like get more tuned in with your body, when you have had a deep restful sleep. And one thing that I swear by and works for me, and I think that's the other thing, it's like you have to find, there's some universal things that work for everybody, but then you always have to be figuring out like what works for you, because everybody's a little different. But I take magnesium glycinate before bed, and that for me, just deeper sleep, more recovered when I wake up. But in terms of like the different studies, I think I might be more bullish on health in the future than Bitcoin, because I think that Bitcoiners are going to fund a lot of these studies because they are personally curious about it, and it's things that typically wouldn't get funded. So I'm really excited, for the next however many years for these different health studies.
Absolutely. No, me too. And I agree with you. I think Bitcoiners will fund those things. I was actually surprised, like I started talking about some of this stuff on Twitter probably like a year and a half ago. And at first it was kind of just like, I didn't have a plan with it. I was just like sharing it because I was interested in it. I was really surprised at how interested Bitcoiners were in these topics. And so I agree with you 100%. Like for me, like the Bitcoiner community is very into these topics. And I think it's for the reasons you brought up and we talked about at the beginning of like, your body is the foundation of your sovereignty. Like, you can have the freest money and, not have any sort of government like imposing anything on you. But if your health fails, like that's a different loss of sovereignty. Suddenly you can't do the things you want to do. You can't walk there or do this or run or, whatever, do something with your kids. And that's another way you can lose your sovereignty. And I think that's why Bitcoiners are into it. But yeah, I think they will. And, it's actually, it's infuriating the way in which research happens. And when you really dig into like how and why, like a certain study is done over another study, there's so much politics, really, is like the right word. Not that it's not coming from the government, but it's just social and institutional and donor pressure and as well as just like what's considered the norm. I think one of the biggest tragedies of modern science is at some point it swung from, I feel like scientists were researching novel questions and trying to push the envelope. But in the aftermath, I think of a lot of hyper specialization, a lot of the academic environment changing really dramatically. It's hard to do something that's outside the norm. It is difficult to do research, which is really, more than one or two hops away from what's considered known and standard. And so you have a huge volume of research on, certain things that are very normal. And then these really interesting studies that, at least like what's interesting to me, different people might find different things interesting. But literally, I haven't been able to find one study on we're going to modify their circadian rhythm of 60 athletes and see what it changes. Like low cost, there's no operational barriers to that. Like it doesn't require a lot of money. It doesn't require, you need like 30-30, like people, like some people that are just going to adhere to like a light environment. You could do it very easily, but it's just outside of that Overton window. And so it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the Bitcoins will eventually come in, and there will be an explosion of people asking different questions, and I think, especially in health, and because if something you do makes a big impact on your energy levels or your health, it really can change your perspective because it's something you feel all the time. And one thing that I've been using the last couple of years has been this knees over toes stuff. I'm not sure if you've
Yes.
been banned on Instagram, and it was introduced to me by my college teammate who trains me every summer, Paul McCoy, and we're always trying to add and little different things that make an impact. And just my tendons, like the backwards walking for the warm up, the anterior tib stuff, really getting your knees over your toes has really helped my tendons. And that wasn't what was taught, when I was coming up. And it's just crazy to see how much things can change. And obviously when you play basketball, you put in a lot of awkward positions, but I think obviously training that way and feeling comfortable in those helps a lot. So I feel like there is people that have gone outside that norm or are more open to becoming Bitcoiners. So when I see someone doing something different, I actually reached out to Ben Knees Over Toes on Instagram and invited him to the Swan Salon in LA. But he's like, nah, not into that yet. I'm like, I think you will be eventually, because he's gone kind of so far out of the norm, and it's obviously helped a lot of people.
So we're gonna orange pill knees over toes guy.
We'll see. I
Heard it
think you
here
guys,
first. You heard it here first.
uh,
I love the tibialis trainer. I've got one literally right over there. I can see it from where I'm sitting. That was a huge getting that, tibialis workout. So good. And actually, like I'm a big walker. I walk. Maybe we'll go into this. So I walk 20,000 steps a day. I'm pretty well known for that. I've done that for a long time. It built up over time, but I'm a big walker. The tibialis trainer actually really helped my walking. Like it just made it feel better. You get that muscle firing, right? Because nothing you've ever done has trained it really. No machine you've ever used in a gym, no barbell exercise you've ever done has really trained that muscle. And yet, unless maybe you did like jumping stuff, but it's fantastic. I love that. It made a big difference. But so,
and then I think we obviously didn't used to wear shoes, so it's like turned off a lot of muscles, in the lower calf and feet and ankles. So I think training that is great.
yeah, I swear by zero drop shoes. So all I wear, which means like no heel lift for the people listening. I've got, a pair right here. So they're just totally flat, very flexible, wide toe box. They're great. These are field grounds. Love those. So walking was one of the biggest ones for me. And I think it's two things. I think it's the walking itself, but then it's also you're outside in the sun. So like my two favorite things, I want to ask you about sun after this, but
Yeah.
for me, like I'm fortunate enough and not everybody has this, it's truly a privilege, but I have a remote job and my remote job consists predominantly of phone calls and emails and messages. And so because of that, I've gotten really good at doing it all off my phone. And because I can do that, I just walk. I walk all day and I just take calls, I send emails. And so I walk over 10 miles a day. I walk for over 4 hours a day. Not one big walk, but just I stay moving and I'm able to do my life and my job like that. Not everybody is. Not that you need to do it for 4 hours to get the benefits, but so I'll share one data point and maybe get your reaction to it, and then also like an observation. So one of the most interesting studies I've ever seen on walking is they had a very lot of people in the study, and they tracked their step count over time, and then the health outcomes of these people, and they found that walking more is better for you than not smoking. So what that means is that if you smoked cigarettes and walked 10,000 steps a day, you would be better off from an all-cause mortality level, or at least it would be equal, of continuing to smoke if the alternative was you stopped walking that much. So not doing those steps had such a large impact on your chance of dying from any cause. It was comparable to how bad smoking is. It is one of the biggest things. So what's your reaction to
that? It seems pretty crazy, and I'm going to have to look that one up. But I mean, I definitely agree that walking is really good for you, but to see it have that much impact for something that's free, you can do wherever you are, and it's easy, especially if you incorporate it with other activities, and obviously there's a lot of other benefits to walking, like thinking clearer, usually get some different ideas when you go for a walk, you're outside, but that is incredible.
Yeah, it was like, I think in the highest, like 12,000 steps a day group, it was a 60% reduction in all-cause mortality. So your chance of dying for any reason over this time frame was reduced by 60% relative to the groups that didn't walk that much. Just staggering. There's a few that the numbers vary like a bit, but there's multiple studies that kind of back that up. So it's truly one of the kind of MVPs on just overall longevity and health. But you kind of went where I was already going with it. The other reason I love it is that and there's a ton of famous people throughout history that basically said as much, but you think better. Like when I'm walking, I'm more creative, I'm clearer, I'm better at solving problems. Like I just feel more engaged, more functional. And the research also backs this up. You not only had Steve Jobs would always do walking meetings, Einstein, Thoreau. There's a number of well-known figures throughout history that really celebrated the benefits of walking. But the research is there too. There was a recent study, I think, out of Stanford that showed that basically problem solving while walking like boosted creativity in companies by like 60%. So it there's something so primal, I think. There's something so foundational about walking. We're born to walk.
Yeah, and like the risk of injury is obviously extremely low, and yeah, just being outside. One interesting thing, I think you'll like this. I invest in a lot of health companies as well, especially before I found Bitcoin. But one of them is Levels, a constant glucose monitor, and they have some studies or have shared info, and I tested this out myself, that after you eat a meal, you should go for a walk, brisk walk immediately after, because it smooths out the glucose spike. Even if you have a bad meal, if you go for a brisk walk afterwards, instead of your glucose shooting up, it'll smooth it out, which is obviously better for you.
You have just given me the most fantastic piece of ammunition, because I just like instinctually want to do it. After I finish a meal, all I want to do is take a walk. Like I've been that way for a while, and now I have something that I can definitely use to convince people to do that with me. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is, it's like if you listen to what your body and what you think you need, the more tuned in you are, you can kind of do these things without having all this research. Like if it feels good to walk, like you should walk. If you are thinking clearer, when you're outside, like spend more time outside. So yeah, I think just listening to your body and just trying to tune in to what works for you is probably one of the most important things you can do.
No, and that is, I mean, that's the end all and be all for several reasons. Like, that's ultimately how I've navigated it. And I'll talk about kind of research and what the data shows and studies, when I do these conversations, because, people kind of want to hear that. People kind of want to, they, at least today, look for something a little more than this just makes me feel really good. It's helpful to know that there's at least some empirical data, but at the end of the day, like, you need to find what works for you, and the research isn't going to do that for you. What's going to do that for you is you trying things and seeing what works well for your body or not. I think diet is one of those key areas in this location. I don't believe that there is a one-size-fits-all diet whatsoever, like in bigger ways. There's so much contention, I think, over keto and carbs and no carbs and high carbs and fat and all these things. And, I know people that have had their lives changed from a zero or a low-carb diet or a carnivore diet. Me personally, like I eat a lot of carbs and I function well. I function better, like eating carbs before a workout and, various things like works really well for me. Like my blood sugar is fine. Like I don't get tired after eating a bunch of carbs. Like, I function fine with those, but other people, like it completely, like impacts them super heavily. And that's the power of like, you can't just go off of what people say. It's like you need to experiment for yourself and you need to find what works.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it depends what you're doing. Like, are you lifting weights? Are you walking? Are you playing high intensity sport? it just depends on what your requirements are as well. But on the nutrition, I mean, one thing that I experimented with this off season was eating a lot more steak, and I found it really worked for me. I think I'd always some days in the past I would feel like I just needed a steak. I needed something stronger, and
Yeah.
I would have one. But I tried to kind of experiment, taking that, a bit more extreme, 4 times a week, 5 times a week,
Yeah.
and I felt great. I got lighter, but I got stronger, and felt like I was recovering better as well. So it's always, a moving target as well, for the different phases of in season, out of
Yeah.
season as well.
Absolutely. I think animal foods are a necessity. Like I think we've gotten in a bad direction with a lot of the veganism stuff. Ethically I get why people do it, and I, respect it if it's an ethical choice. But if you're like arguing that it is nutritionally superior, I think is I think misguided. And I say this, I actually was a vegetarian for the first 18 years of my life. I grew up a vegetarian. So like I know what it's like to not eat meat, and it was not good for me, at least. Made a huge difference in my health when I changed that, and energy, weight, everything. So I question, I think, I question nutritional veganism. And, on the ethical side, well, I'm not going to get into this here, but, family farm, find a family farm near you. You want better quality meat, you want a better footprint, like find a farmer near you. But it's, I've started doing, like a steak every day for breakfast, and it's crazy. If I do that, like I do a steak, a little cheese, some blueberries, like it's a great breakfast. And I've noticed like I was doing like eggs and potatoes and sausage, things like that before. It wasn't that different, but for whatever reason, if I eat a steak for breakfast, I'm not hungry for like 6 or 7 hours after. Like I can go so much longer before I feel like I really need to eat again. It's just made a huge difference. It's interesting.
Yeah, I need to try the steak for breakfast. I've been having the same breakfast for probably 8 or 9 years now.
Yeah.
Three eggs with toast and avocado, and have kind of added different things to it, but that kind of gives me enough energy for working out hard in the mornings. But I'll have to try the steak.
Yeah, I did. I would do like I'd make this big it was like a layer of potatoes, like 12 eggs, some green peppers, onions, and some sausage, bake it in the oven, and I'd eat like a fourth of that for breakfast. I ate that for breakfast every day for I think the last year. So I'm actually with you 100%. I think having one meal a day that's just always the same, and it's breakfast, I don't know, it does something. Like you don't have to think about it. It's just the same every day. I love that. Like I've changed it now to the steak, which has been good, but I'm eating that steak every day. So 9 years
Yeah.
though. I haven't done anything remotely that long.
Yeah, I enjoy it, so I'm happy to keep that. Yeah, I think probably forever. We'll see.
Love it. Okay, so I'm really big on sunlight. I think that sunlight is probably one of just the core foundations of health. I think it is completely underappreciated. I think it is demonized unnecessarily. And I think, it is just something that we are entirely lacking as a society right now. I think we have become incredibly sun deficient, and it is one of the most important things you can do for your health. What are your thoughts on sunlight?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another thing I've kind of experimented more with in this previous off season, and I've always enjoyed the sun, but I do have, I guess, fairer skin, and the sun's fairly strong in Australia, but I've built up more, and I think I think it's probably talking to you and seeing some of the things you've been posting about how important that morning sunlight is, you know, to get in your eye straight away, and how that can, I guess, protect your skin a bit more as the intensity of the sun increases. But I think it's really important to try to build up over time. And I know that's something you can go into more detail on, but I think it's helped my recovery, and just general energy levels. And I know people always talk about the vitamin D aspect, but there's a lot more that goes into it. So I'll let you share what your research. I'm more on the end of, it makes me feel really good, so I do more of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's sufficient. And ultimately, like, that's where the conversation comes down to, of like, with the sun stuff, I'm always just telling people, like, look, this is not like something you need to get blood work to like confirm that it's working. Like, literally just do this for like 2 weeks. Like, just increase your sun exposure appropriately and at the right times for 2 weeks, and just tell me how you feel. Just try it, because it's enormously experiential. It's not something that like, oh, we got to check your vitamin D levels. In fact, I think I've almost never spoken about vitamin D, because everyone is aware of vitamin D, and it's important, it's critical, it's, you know, it's obviously a, you know, a big variable, but they're so unaware of all of the other benefits because it's so far beyond vitamin D. And I think one of the reasons I avoid talking about it is because people think you just take a pill. Well, if it's vitamin D, then, well, we've replaced the sun. You don't need the sun. We've got a pill now. I'm not sure that's how it works. No. We've got a pill. You don't need the sun. It's a silly. I mean, it's just a ridiculous statement. But it's, yeah, it's something where I agree with you on, you build up gradually. Like, burning is bad. Don't go get a sunburn. Like, sunburns are bad. If you avoid burning exposure and you build up, you know, appropriately, I think that, you know, any skin cancer risks are, I think, quite low and overblown. I think, you know, I'll probably not get into that on this one. There's a whole, you can dig into that debate for, you know, we can talk about that for an hour, but, you know, just don't burn. That's pretty much it. That's 90% of it. But I think the thing that most people don't understand about the sun and is that it's really about sunlight in your eyes. Like, sunlight on your skin does vitamin D, and it does infrared light upregulating mitochondrial function, which is really critical. Mitochondria, I think, are, you know, one of the like foundational pillars of health is mitochondrial health. But you know, so sun on the skin does that. But sun in the eyes, like visual light, it regulates every system in the body. It regulates your endocrine system, so that means your hormonal levels. We're talking about cortisol, your stress hormone. We're talking about testosterone and estrogen, you know, sex hormones. Those all get modulated by the pattern of light and dark and getting certain wavelengths of sunlight in the eyes at certain times in the day, obviously the natural times, but seeing sunlight when you first wake up, like kickstarting your system, etc. But it also influences, like, you know, everyone talks about like dopamine nowadays, and like we have these, you know, screens and all of this stuff, and like, oh, we're hijacking our dopamine. Like, well, how do you have healthy dopamine levels? Like, well, sunlight, actually, like a circadian rhythm. Getting good sunlight in the morning is enormously beneficial to having good dopamine levels. The sun influences so much in the brain, neurotransmitters. It influences recovery time. Sun on the skin, actually, another thing it does, it creates something called intracellular melatonin. And so most of the melatonin in your body, it's not in your brain, which, like, that's helping you sleep. It's actually inside of your cells. And it actually functions there not as a sleep hormone, but almost as like engine coolant for mitochondria. So mitochondria are actually really cool because they have a rotary motor. Literally inside them, there's this, it's like a motor, it spins. And in the process of spinning, it generates energy. And so you can think of like melatonin in the cells as almost like engine coolant for that motor. And so in that, it's really important for your recovery at the deepest level. But it's sunlight, influences everything. And there's a ton of great stuff on, 50 or 60% reductions in like countless cancers, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, different, colon cancer, huge reductions in MS, so multiple sclerosis, much higher the farther you get away from the equator. The more UV light people are exposed to, the lower the rates of MS. They're finding that even diabetes is a heavily circadian illness. It is, I've made the argument that actually a lot of diabetes is in some parts a light illness. And these might sound like kind of crazy statements, but you can go on Harvard, you can go on Cleveland Clinic, you can go on, to Princeton's websites, their health kind of divisions, and you can find a ton of this stuff linking, diabetes and diabetes treatments to actually light and sun and these various things. We have, I'll shut up here for a sec, but like, light is the most bioactive drug on the planet. And if you don't believe me on that, go sit in a pitch dark room for 24 hours. You will lose your mind. Like, you will feel more intoxicated in a not nice way than any drug you can take.
Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah, that's some pretty crazy stuff on the diabetes as well. Have you looked into, like, I know a lot of athletes are starting to use like the red light therapy. Thoughts on that?
So that's actually, no, exactly. That is when I was talking about like the infrared and the mitochondria and the intracellular melatonin, that's what that does. So they're using basically the red light is actually like, mostly it's a near infrared light device. And so it promotes recovery. And like you said, athletes like use it to recover and various things. The reason it's doing that is because you're actually creating that intracellular melatonin. That's one of the primary like mechanisms by which that happens. They're great. Like they're great, but also like the sun gives you that, like what is the biggest?
Yeah, obviously, yeah, the direct source, the original is always better, right?
Yeah, like if you can't get it, like by all means, I have one of those devices. Like I'll use it as the sun goes down for a little bit, and it's good for recovery, it's good for skin, it's good for all these things, and by all means use it. But no, like you're getting those exact same benefits from sunlight, and actually in like greater quantity.
Yeah. No, that's and I mean, I feel it myself when I go out in the sun. It's like, especially after training, it's like you get recharged.
Yeah. That, like, at this stage for me, man, it's like, even just like I get a cloudy day versus sunny day. I mean, I feel the difference in 24 hours. Like, it's, you stay inside all day versus go outside in the morning. I mean, these are like small time frame experiments you can run with yourself. Like, wake up, stay inside and don't see the sun for the first 4 hours of the day. Pay attention to how you feel. The next day, or do that for a week, then the next week, go outside for the first 4 hours of the day. Set up a desk on, your porch or lanai or whatever, if you can, or whatever, wake up early, take a long walk in the morning. Do that for a week. See how you feel. I would be shocked. I'd be just shocked if it isn't a dramatic difference.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I've found as well, because you have a limited amount of time and resources. What things are going to move the needle the most? And when you find a couple of things that are low effort but give you a lot of benefit, those are the really valuable things.
Absolutely. And it's free. I mean, that's another, I advocate it because it is, I would argue my light environment makes the biggest difference on my mood and energy out of anything else. So it's a really big, at least for me, lever to pull. But it's also free. It's also free. Walking, sunlight, something no one can ever accuse me of is that I'm selling anything with this. I'm not selling anybody sunlight or walking. These are free things that anybody can go do it in, we have limited time, like you said, and you're a professional athlete, you have a ton of demands on your time and travel and environment because of that makes it, certainly more challenging, especially in critical periods. But, so does a parent with 4 kids. You know what I mean? Like there's various challenges that everybody faces, and like that's gonna, obviously affect what you can do. But I think it's something, anybody can do more of. Anybody can at least, you're here, you can at least get here. You might not be able to walk 10 miles a day, not that you need to get huge benefits, or, you might only be able to get a certain amount of sun, but, you can get huge benefits from just 20 minutes first thing in the morning. Like, even if that's all you get, that's going to be a lot better than 0.
Definitely. And there is no one busier out there than the mums, or more important. So got to give the mums a shout out. But when you went, you mentioned like a blood test, or you don't get the vitamin D checked. One interesting thing I did recently, and I got to give a shout out to Dr. Bob up in Seattle, who's been awesome for my career, and I guess opening up my eyes to different things like acupuncture and things like that. He did this kind of special blood test to see what my iron ratios were, and ended up donating some blood, and felt amazing afterwards. And I think that's something that I haven't dove super deep into, but it's obviously more important for men as you get older.
Yeah. No, I've heard, you're not the first person to tell me that. And iron buildup is a real thing in blood donation. I've heard several, you're not the first person to tell me. I can think of at least like 10 people that had higher iron. They did blood donation, felt amazing after. So
yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah. In terms of like, I know I mentioned knees over toes as like, our orange pill candidate. One of the health startups I've invested in is a water testing company called Lab. And I've been talking with him for ages, and I'm like, you have to incorporate, some Bitcoin payments or market to the Bitcoin community, because of obviously don't trust, verify. And you want to verify that your water that you're using at home is clean and safe, because there's a lot of things that sometimes are in the water that shouldn't be, and depending on what's in there depends on what filter you need. So if we could send a few people over to Simple Lab, that would help me with my orange pilling of Johnny. So I'll have to send him this clip.
Let's do it. No, and so I'll echo that. So you should definitely go check out Simple Lab. And the reason is I had my mind blown once. So when I bought the house I'm in currently, I, a little bit into it, I had a company come out to do water testing. I was just kind of curious, and I'd been doing kind of large bottled shipments. Like I'd get like those 5-gallon jugs, but I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I, had them come out. I was thinking about installing a filter system. And I'm in Florida. Like Florida has some of the higher chlorine levels in the nation. So, we're one of the worst offenders. There was more chlorine in the tap water than my pool. Like, it's insane. I'm huge on that. So I ended up doing an RO system under the sink. And I also did like a multi-stage carbon system on the main water line at the house. So that means the shower water, bath, whatever, that all the other water, it's not the same as the RO. It's not quite as good, but at least a lot of it comes out. I'm also a huge proponent for that. So definitely, get your water checked. And this isn't even like a fluoride thing. Like, you could have that conversation, but even if we just assume that fluoride's totally fine, it's chlorine, it's chloramine, it's various different things. It's not limited to that. It's hugely disruptive for your gut microbiome. Like that shit will mess up your gut.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done a fair bit of research on that. I need to get the whole water system at the main line. That's a good idea.
They're not expensive either. I mean, they're a few $100s. Like, I'm not going to diminish that, but they'll last forever. Like it's a couple $100s. It's a big carbon filter. They'll come install it. You're good for 5 or 6 years. So, I mean, in the larger scheme of things, they're relatively inexpensive. And it's just, your showers are great. Like your skin will feel awesome after. You're not soaking it in. And that's the other thing. Your skin will absorb chlorine very quickly. You can actually test this. Because you can have like a test strip that measures chlorine in water. And so you can have some chlorinated water. And if you put your hand in it for a little bit and then take your hand out and retest the water, you can see a huge amount of the chlorine was removed. Like you literally absorb it. So getting that out of your shower or your bath or whatever, I think is important.
No, that's an interesting one.
No.
I wanna keep going. I got another orange pill candidate group that I think I want to give a shout out to. P3 in Santa Barbara. They do testing for athletes, pros, college, high school, and they can kind of track your development over time. And these guys are awesome, and it's a great vibe down there in Santa Barbara. And I've been chatting with a few of them about Bitcoin the last couple of years. But one thing that I guess has been fun for me is I've been getting more athletic over time. And, usually I think you probably peak between athletically maybe 24 to 28. And I'm 33 right now, even though I tell myself I'm 26 because age is just a number, right? But I've been like, I went and tested this summer with them, and my numbers had improved, like my vertical jump, my lateral speed, and I attribute a lot of that to just experimenting with different things. I think the steak and the diet was a big one, but then also my training with Paul McCoy, my college teammate, just incorporating some more of that knees over toes, and just finding what works for me and what works for us training wise. So if you're up in that Portland area as well and you want a personal trainer, you should reach out to Paul or reach out to me, and I'll connect you with him. But I think having some Bitcoin events in the Santa Barbara area would be cool next summer.
I love that. That's massive, man. I mean, seeing that continue to improve as you've gotten older, that's got to feel great. I actually, I'm a little bit of what's the word? I guess a skeptic on. There's obviously certain natural decreasing functions as we age, but I think we've swung way too far in like accepting the inevitability of just like downhill. I can give like one example that's very specific. There's some emerging stuff, like people always talk about how your testosterone levels decline with age. But there's some emerging research that it's really just that your lifestyle gets shit as you get older. Like if you adjust for lifestyle, that decline is marginal from what I've seen. Like it really doesn't fall off the way that people have been led to believe. It's just what happens as people get older and they're sedentary, their diets, get worse, their sleep gets worse, they're on a bunch of medication, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Their circadian rhythms messed up. And if you actually control for that and adjust for that, the decline just isn't really there. And, like for me personally, like, I mean, I'm 31. For a lot of people watching, they'd say like, I'm still obviously like a young guy. But like my testosterone levels, my athletic performance, which is a fraction of Delhi's, but I'm into it in my own way. My I'm at all-time highs for all of my lifts. My T levels are higher. I have the most energy. I'm sleeping better than I've ever slept. So I share that just to say that, like, if you're not like in your early 20s, like, it's not that like that was your peak. And, for the vast majority of people, like, there's so many optimizations to make that you never made. And you could be at the best you've ever been in terms of really whatever matters to you. And, you know, don't write that off. Like, whatever sort of challenges you're facing of sleep or weight or energy or focus or whatever, like, you can just get to work and improve that. Like, I guarantee you there's 20 levers you could pull to optimize that. And it's just a matter of doing it.
I couldn't agree more, and I think I guess not putting limits on yourself is sometimes the first hurdle, because you might have different people saying to you, or even in sports, it's like, oh, you're closer to the end than the start, and it's like, well, you don't know that. I mean, I'm feeling better than I've felt before, and you look at like Tom Brady playing till he's 45.
Yeah. Yeah.
LeBron, what he's doing, and obviously those are two of the all-time greats, and takes a lot of different things to be there at the top for that long, but they have taken incredible care of their body for a long time, and you can always keep improving and finding things that work. And that's what I think I was most excited about this summer at P3, because I'm like, hey, I am getting better. This stuff is working, and how much more is there out there that I can still improve at? So that was the most, I think, exciting thing for me.
And we're discovering, it's kind of going back to your initial, I think one of the first things you said is like, you're discovering how much we don't know. Another way of saying that is that we're constantly discovering new things. And like, that's the exciting part, is like, a lot of the circadian science and stuff that has made like one of the largest impacts in my life, as well as some of the training methodology that I've used, only came about recently. Like, it was not there. It was not popular. Like, nobody was talking about this stuff. Like, 7 years ago, it was fringe, like the light stuff. It's now more popular because of Huberman. But I mean, even that, like from fringe to Huberman, it was like 7 years. It's growing, it's expanding rapidly. Like, we're learning so much more about the body. And I think that rate of change in our knowledge is only going to increase. It's been one of the highest yielding like investments I've ever made, was really taking the time to study, learn, and implement some of these things. Like, I couldn't put a price on it. Like, it's insane the returns you get. It touches every area of your life.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like, if you can find ways to raise your energy levels, everything else improves. So yeah, how do you can't put a price on that.
I have one shout out I'm going to do, and then I'm sure you got a busy day. I think we can wrap up. So I was trained in this methodology a number of years ago. It's something called functional range conditioning. And it's now used by like a ton of pro sports teams around the world, the Lakers, the Giants, Major League Baseball teams. Like, there's a NASA, UFC, so West Side Barbell, ton of great organizations use this now. It's by a guy, Dr. Andrea Spina, and I got trained in it a number of years ago. I'm a provider, not that I see any clients or anything. I work for Swan, but I was trained as a practitioner. And one of the most incredible, I can't really summarize it in like 2 minutes, but it's a system of that has, basically studied like, well, how do we improve physically? Like, how do we have more output? How do we have more function? And, the conclusion these guys came to looking at the research is like, all movement comes from joints. So like, like muscles don't move, they contract and, expand. That's all they do. Like, your bicep does one thing, and it's this. That's all it does. It It doesn't move. Movement happens at joints. Like joints are what move. And so all force that the body outputs is outputted from joint structures. It is groups of muscles and connective tissues exerting force through joint structures. And so it's a system to basically optimize those joint structures across ranges of motion, which might sound a little boring or dry, but was the most effective. If you are dealing with pain, if you are dealing with discomfort, or you want to improve your athletic or sport performance, for me, this is like top of the list. And there's guys all over the country and world, I think like 10,000 practitioners. So there's someone near you could learn this from. But just a shout out to the functional range conditioning guys, and you should accept Bitcoin.
I like it. I like it a lot.
So it was an absolute pleasure, man. I think we can wrap here, but just great having this chat with you. I've enjoyed our conversations over the last year. Thank you for coming on and just having a back and forth on some of this stuff. It's always a pleasure. And for the audience, I know I'm always available. Like, feel free to DM me. If you have any questions on any of this stuff, any resources, happy to share. I do this just because I'm passionate about it and it's made a big difference in my life. So happy to share. And thank you for coming on, my friend.
Thanks, Stephen. It's been awesome and look forward to learning more from you in the future.
Pleasure. See you.